There is a photograph of my son taped inside my cubicle, and at 2:14 on a Tuesday, I turned it face down before I picked up the phone. 2 o'clock is the minute I let myself look at it. 1 minute, not more. It's a rule I made in the spring so I would stop looking at it all day. The principal's secretary talked fast. There was a keyboard running under her voice, and then the keyboard stopped. "Ma'am, I need you to confirm something before we release him," she said. My parents were at the school. They had a form. The form released my son into their custody for the afternoon, and at the bottom of it was my name, in handwriting that leaned the wrong way. I have signed that name maybe 10,000 times. It doesn't lean. "Put my mother on," I said. And then, because that is not a thing a normal person says to a school, "Please. Paper. A door." Her voice arrived already in the middle of a sentence, the way it always does. "Because you weren't going to make it anyway." My father said nothing behind her. He has a talent for it. "Mom, who filled out that form?" She laughed once. "The small one. The one she saves for other people's children. A woman who works 10 hours a day isn't raising him anyway," she said. "Ask him who packs his lunch." 2 afternoons a week, for 9 months, they had been picking him up. Every single time, I said thank you. I got all the way to the parking garage without my keys and had to go back up for them. 12 minutes. I have made that drive in 19. The office smelled like floor wax. Somewhere down the hall, a class was singing the days of the week. His red jacket sat on the bench by the door with the hood already up, like he'd been waiting to go somewhere. The principal met me at the counter, holding one sheet of paper by its edges, the way you hold something you'd rather not leave fingerprints on. He didn't say anything in the hallway. He opened the door to his office, waited for me to go in first, and pushed it shut with 2 fingers. Then he turned the sheet around on the desk, so it faced me. "Ma'am," he said, "before you go get him, is this your signature?" I said no. The color went out of his face in stages. "Then somebody has been signing as you since September," he said. "And not just at this school." There was a wall clock in that office, with a second hand that clicked, instead of sweeping. I listened to it do that 11 or 12 times. My hands were on the desk. I hadn't put them there. I remember thinking, very clearly, that I needed to move them before he saw, and then not moving them. Down the hall the class got to Thursday. I asked him to say the last part again. He said it the same way, which was how I knew he had already said it to himself a few times before I got there. "My name is Camille Parrish. I was 28 that Tuesday, and I had spent 6 years building a life narrow enough to hold, and the whole thing came apart, in an office that smelled like floor wax, while a class sang the days of the week. If you have ever been handed a piece of paper with your own name on it in someone else's handwriting, stay with me. You'll know when we get to the part where I understood what the paper was actually for. I signed him out that afternoon in front of the principal, slowly so both of us could watch my hand do it. It doesn't lean. It never has. My father taught me that, which I would like you to remember later. Then I walked out to the bench and picked up the red jacket. We bought that jacket in a thrift store, on Pearl Street, the March before he started kindergarten, with money from a stretch of overtime I had taken specifically so we could go somewhere and buy something that wasn't food. It was the only red thing on the rack. He put it on over his shirt and zipped it himself, all the way to his chin, and then stood there with his arms out, like he was waiting to be inspected. "It has a hood," he told me, as if I might have missed it, as if that were an argument. $6. I remember because I counted it out in quarters and singles, at the register like a person in a movie about being broke, and he watched every coin land. And on the way to the car, he said, "Do we still have money?" And I said yes, and he believed me. He wore it that day at school. He wore it in the car when I picked him up early, and didn't explain why. He wore it in the kitchen that night, while I made pasta with one hand, and held my phone with the other, and got nowhere. "Are you mad?" he asked me from the doorway. "Not at you." "At Grandma?" I put the spoon down. 6 years old and already sorting the adults in his life into weather systems. "I'm doing a work thing," I said, which was the first lie I told him about any of this, and not the last one, and the one I would take back if I could take back only one. That night after he was asleep, I sat on the floor of the hallway outside his room with my laptop on my knees and tried to reconstruct August. Here is what I could reconstruct. August 21st, 2025. I had come off a stretch at work where our biggest client had rolled out a campaign across 4 markets without clearing a single image license, and I had spent 11 days sending violation notices and getting back the word sorry in 6 different fonts. I do compliance for an affiliate marketing company. I read contracts. I check permissions. I compare what a company claims it is allowed to do against what it is actually allowed to do, and I write the letter that explains the difference. I am, professionally, the person who reads the whole thing. I got to my parents' house at 8:40 at night to pick him up. My mother had a stack of paper on the counter next to a glass of wine, squared up, the corners lined. School stuff, she said. It all has to go back Monday. I started reading the first page. I got maybe a third of the way down. Camille. She put 2 fingers on the top of the stack and slid it an inch toward me. You're swaying. Sign it, take him home, sleep. The bottom 4 pages weren't filled in. I remember noticing that. That's the part I can't get past. I noticed. These are blank. Because I don't know his teacher's name yet, and you don't either, she said. I'll finish them and drop them off. You're going to make me drive to that school twice. There was a real form under my hand. The emergency card was real. The field trip permission was real. The photo of him from the year before was paper clipped to the top of the health form, where it was supposed to be. Everything I could see was true, and the true things were holding up the 4 pages I couldn't see. I signed all of it. It took less than a minute. My son was asleep in the next room on the couch, where he always fell asleep, and I was thinking about whether I had gas in the car. On the way out, my father held the door and said, "Drive safe." And that was the whole thing, he said. 9 months later, I sat on the hallway floor and counted the pages in my memory over and over. 4, 4, 4, and could not for the life of me remember which 4. I called the school at 7:40 the next morning from the parking lot at work with the engine still running. The front desk assistant put me through to the same secretary from the day before, who had clearly been told to be careful with me, which I could hear in the first 2 words. He said, "Not just at this school," I said. "I need to know what that means. I think you should talk to him directly." "Is he in?" "He's in the district office this morning." A pause with a whole sentence sitting inside it. "Ma'am, can you come in at 3:15? He asked me to ask you to bring photo identification and something with your signature on it. Something old. Something old." I sat in my car with my hand on the gear shift and understood that a man I had met 4 times in 6 years was building an evidentiary file, and that he was building it before I was. At 3:15, there were 2 folders on his desk. One was thin and had my son's name on the tab. The other one was thick, and it had no name on it at all. He opened the thin one first. "This is your son's file," he said. "I'm allowed to show you all of it. A standing pickup authorization, dated September 8th. Not a one-day slip. A permanent one. The kind you file once and never think about again. The kind that says these 2 people may collect this child at any time without further notice." My mother's name printed, my name signed, leaning, an emergency contact card. Contact number 1 had been my cell phone for 2 years. Someone had drawn a single line through it, initialed the line, and written my mother's number above it. My initials. Also leaning. Then he laid out the early release slips in a row like a hand of cards. 9 of them. Tuesdays and Thursdays, he said. 1:40, 1:50, 2:10. Never later than 2:30. I looked at the row for a while. "That's the good light," I said. He didn't know what that meant. Neither did I yet. It came out of my mouth from somewhere below the part of me that was still keeping up. I asked him whether anyone had ever called me, about any of it, about a single one of the 9. "Contact number 1, he said, and stopped, because he had already heard how the end of the sentence was going to sound. I want to be exact about what I did next, because for 9 months I had been so grateful that I had let it make me stupid. And I was not going to be stupid twice. I took my phone out and photographed every page in that folder, front and back, with his permission, in the order he had laid them out. Then, I asked him to write the date and the time on a sticky note and photograph that too. He watched me do it and something in his shoulders came down. "You've done this before," he said. "I write violation notices for a living." Then he put his hand flat on the second folder, the thick one with no name on the tab, and he did not open it. "This one isn't a school record," he said. "It came to me from the district, and it isn't about our enrollment. And I want to be honest with you. I'm not sure I should be showing it to you at all." "Then why did you tell me it exists?" "Because your name is on the cover sheet," he said. "And I've been sitting with that since yesterday morning." He turned it 90 degrees on the desk. He didn't push it toward me, he just turned it, so I could read the top line without touching it. "Application for verification of satisfactory educational progress. Minor performance work permit. Renewal." Under that, 3 fields. Minor's name, my son's, spelled right, birth date right. Parent or guardian, my name, signed leaning, and employer. 2 Afternoons Media, LLC. The clock in that office clicked. I had one hand on the edge of his desk, and the other one flat on my own leg, and I was reading the word employer, the way you read a word in a language you used to speak. 2 afternoons a week. That was the arrangement. That was the favor. That was the thing I said thank you for at the door, every single time, with my keys already in my hand. They had named the company after it. "Ma'am," the principal said, from a long way off, "do you want water?" I said no, and then I said something I had not planned to say, in a voice I didn't like. "He's 6. I know. He can't have an employer, he's 6. I know," he said again. And that was the moment I understood that this man was not going to save me, that he had called me in because he was frightened, and that whatever this was, it was already bigger than a school. I asked for a copy of the second folder. He said he couldn't. The district packet wasn't his record to release, and if he handed it over, he'd be the one who broke the chain on it. "Then tell me who it belongs to," I said. "The State Labor Department." He wrote it on the sticky note. Then he wrote a second line under it and turned that around too. "And this is what you ask them for. Certified copies of the full application file, as the person whose signature appears on it. Don't ask nicely. Ask in writing." I put the note in my coat pocket. I have it still. It's the first page of what would eventually become 400 and some pages. In the parking lot, I sat in the car and did not start it. A bus went by. Then another one. Then a woman knocked on my window to ask if I was leaving the space. And I said no, and she waited anyway for about a minute before she gave up and drove off. I called my mother at 5:02. "Camille, what's 2 Afternoons Media?" The pause was 1 full second. I have listened to that pause in my head hundreds of times since, and it is the single most useful thing anyone gave me that week, because it wasn't confusion. Confusion is fast. Confusion says, "What?" That pause was arithmetic. "Where did you hear that?" she said. "Answer the question." "It's a bookkeeping thing your father set up," she said, warm now, warming up like a room. "For the gas money, for the snacks. Do you know what it costs to feed a growing boy twice a week? Come Sunday. Bring him. I'm making the ham." She hung up before I did. She always has. That night my son wanted the pasta with the shells, and while the water boiled, he stood on the step stool and told me about a boy in his class who could do a cartwheel, and I stood there with the box in my hand and let him talk, and I did not ask him a single question about my parents' house, because I was afraid of what my face would do. 2 things stayed open in me that night, and I could not close either one. Someone had signed my name on a state application, and a company existed, with my son's face in it, named after my gratitude. Sunday I went for the ham. I need you to understand that I still walked in through that kitchen door like a daughter. My father was in his chair with the game on mute. My mother had the good plates out. My son ran ahead of me and hugged her around the hips, and she put her hand on the back of his head and said, "There he is," in a voice she has never once used on me. We ate. She asked about my work. She asked whether I was sleeping. My father said the thing he says about the driveway needing sealing. Then I put my fork down and said, "I want to talk about the forms." "After," my mother said, eyes on my son. "He can go play." After, she said again, and smiled at him, and he took his plate to the sink, like the world's most polite hostage. And the second he was out of the room, her face did not change even slightly, which told me she had practiced. You signed those in August, she said. All of them, at this counter. I watched you. 4 of them were blank. They were not. Mom, I remember. You remember, she said. And she picked up my plate and stacked it on hers, and she said the next part into the sink, over running water, in a completely ordinary voice. You remember 4 blank pages from a year ago, but you don't remember that I've had him every Tuesday, since school started last year, because you were too tired to come get him. Steam came up off the water. She rinsed my plate. I looked at the back of my mother's neck and had the strangest, most detailed thought. That she had chosen to say it while facing away so that she wouldn't have to watch it land. And that this was, in her mind, a kindness. I said thank you every time, I said. You did, she agreed. You have beautiful manners. Then my son came back in for a napkin, and the whole room turned back into a family, instantly, like a light switch. And my mother said, "Tell your mom about Thursday." And he lit up. "We're doing the ice cream one again," he said. "The what?" "The one where I get to pick, and then I say if it's good." He looked at his grandmother, checking. She nodded. He turned back to me, delighted, 6 years old, holding a paper napkin. "My friends watch my videos." I said, "Your videos?" And my mother said evenly, "He means the pictures I send you," which she had never once sent me. And my son opened his mouth to correct her, and she put a spoon of ice cream in front of him, and he forgot. I drove home the long way with the windows down. He fell asleep at the second red light. In the rear view, he had his cheek against the strap, and his hands folded in his lap, the way he does. And I kept looking back at him, and every time I looked back, I thought about the word, again, the ice cream one again. I got him into bed. I hung up the red jacket. I sat down at the kitchen table with my laptop, and I did not search my son's name because I already knew it wouldn't be his name. I searched the ice cream shop on Pearl Street. Then I searched it with the word kid. Then I searched it with the word review. The fourth result was a video with 410,000 views. The thumbnail was my son in the red jacket, hood up, holding a cone with both hands, mouth open, in the enormous fake surprise of a child being directed. There was a name across the bottom, in yellow letters, 3 feet high, and it was not his name. The channel had 512,000 subscribers. I sat there with my hand over my mouth like a woman in a commercial about bad news. Then I clicked the channel, and I clicked the earliest video, which was posted the second week of September. And I watched 40 seconds of my 6-year-old walking out of a school door that I pay taxes to, into a car I have never been in. And I watched him wave at the camera like he'd done it before. Then I tried to comment. Then I tried to log in with my other account. Both of them were already blocked. I watched until 4 in the morning, logged out on a browser I had never used, with the sound so low I had to lean in. There were 400 and some videos. I stopped counting at 300 because the counting was making me sick, and the sickness was in the way. Here is what I did instead, and I want to say plainly that this is the part where I stopped being only his mother and started being what I actually am for a living. I opened a spreadsheet. Column 1, the date posted. Column 2, the day of the week. Column 3, what he was wearing. Column 4, where it was shot. Column 5, anything visible in the frame that a business would have had to say yes to. By dawn, I had 9 months of my son's life in a grid, and the grid told me things that 9 months of standing in that kitchen saying, "Thank you never had." Every single drop went up on a Tuesday or a Thursday night, 3, 4 clips at a time from the same afternoon. Every one of them was shot in daylight, and the light was always the same slanted gold, the light you get between 2 and 4 in the afternoon, and it moved earlier through the year, exactly the way the sun does. He wore the red jacket in 380 of them, and the locations were not a house. There was a stretch in November at the mall on Route 9. Not a corner of the mall. The center court, the fountain, the escalator, the same 3 stores over and over, and in one of them, a woman in a blazer with a lanyard walked into frame, glanced at the camera, and stepped back out with her hands up, laughing, the way an employee behaves around a shoot she has been told about. There was a summer camp open house in March, with a banner in the background, and a staff member holding the door. There was the ice rink, where the video opened on cones set out in a lane along the boards, and a rink attendant skating slowly past the same spot on a loop, keeping people out of the shot. And there was the ice cream shop on Pearl Street, the same one, again and again, and in one video, for about 2 seconds, my mother's hand came into frame, holding a clipboard with a form on it, and the form had a signature block at the bottom, and she moved it out of the shot fast. I have spent 6 years reading forms with signature blocks at the bottom. You do not need one of those to hand a kid a cone. You need one to film in someone's business. I sat back in my kitchen chair, and the sun came up over the sink, and I said it out loud to nobody. Their locations. Not visits, not treats, not grandma spoiling him. 2 afternoons a week in the good light, at businesses that had signed something, on a schedule that had never once moved for a birthday, or a fever, or a snow day. Because the schedule wasn't a favor. It was a shooting schedule, and I had been the one holding the door open for it. I got him to school that morning. I remember his backpack was on crooked, and I fixed it in the drop-off lane, and he said, "You're squeezing," and I let go. That Thursday I did not call first. I drove to my parents' house at 4:15 in the afternoon, and the driveway was empty, and the good light was coming through the front windows, onto the carpet in that long bar it makes, and I let myself in with the key I've had since I was 19. The house was quiet in the specific way a house is quiet when everyone in it has gone somewhere on purpose. There is a back bedroom that used to be mine. They call it his room now. There's a bed with and a bin of blocks, and a shelf, and it is nicer than his room at my apartment. And I had always let that fact sit somewhere I didn't have to look at it. I opened the closet because I wanted to see what he kept there. 6 red jackets, hanging in a row, smallest to largest, on matching wooden hangers, the way a store does it. 5 of them still had the tags on. The plastic was on 2 of them. The sizes went up in a line. The one he was wearing, then the next, then the next, then a boy's large at the far end that would not fit him for 4 years. I stood there in my mother's hallway light and did the only arithmetic that mattered. Nobody buys 4 years of the same red jacket for a child they take to the park. They buy it for a character. I sat down on the floor of that closet with my back against the doorframe and the sleeves of them against my shoulder. I said, "I bought him one." That's the whole thing, I said, out loud in an empty house to a row of coats. I bought him one. $6 in quarters, on Pearl Street, and he zipped it himself. My hands were shaking enough that I photographed the row 3 times before one came out straight, and then I hung everything back exactly the way it had been. And I checked the spacing twice, because I was already thinking about what a person does with a photograph. Then I sat in my car at the end of their street until they came home, and I watched my son get out of the back of my mother's car in the red jacket with his hood up, holding a paper bag from the ice cream shop. And my father walked around and took a tripod out of the trunk and carried it into the garage the way another man carries in a rake. They didn't see me. I drove home and made dinner and let my son tell me about the cartwheel boy again, and I laughed in the right places. And after he went to bed, I started making phone calls. I want to be honest about the next 2 weeks, because if I skip them, you'll think I got smart faster than I did. I called the school first. The principal was careful and kind and completely boxed in. He could flag the standing authorization as disputed. He could restore me as contact number 1, which he did that morning. And I want to say that man moved fast on the one lever he had. Everything else, the district packet, the state file, the company, was outside his building. "I can protect him from 3 o'clock to 3:15, he said. "I can't protect him from the rest of it." I called the platform. There is no one at the platform. There is a form, and the form has a drop-down, and none of the options in the drop-down R. My parents are running a business out of my child's face. I chose the closest one. I got a reference number and 4 days later, a message that said no violation of community guidelines had been found. I called a lawyer and paid $300 for 50 minutes, and he was good, and that was the problem. He asked whether my custody was intact. It was full legal, full physical, no order, no dispute. He asked whether my son was in physical danger. He was not. He asked whether I had lost money. Not a dollar that I could name. He put his pen down. Ms. Parrish, he said, here's the road. You file a civil action. Discovery takes 8 months if everyone behaves. It takes 18 if they don't. You will spend somewhere north of $30,000 to make a court tell your parents something you have already told them, and at the end of it, a judge will very likely say, these are the grandparents, the child is thriving, don't film him anymore, and the videos will still be up. They forged my signature on a school form, which the school has already fixed. He wrote a note. If it were only the school forms, I'd tell you to write a letter and be done. It isn't only the school forms. Then bring me the rest, he said, and bring it in a form somebody has to answer for. Right now, what you have is a spreadsheet and a bad feeling. I sat in the parking lot outside his office for a long time, with the engine off and my son's booster seat in the mirror behind me. A spreadsheet and a bad feeling. I called my mother that night and made my last honest attempt, which is the phrase I use for it now, because at the time I thought I was being reasonable, and I was actually begging. I told her I knew about the channel. I told her about the schedule and the locations and the jackets. I asked her to stop, take it down, and never touch a form with my name on it again. And I told her that if she did that, this ended in her kitchen and nowhere else. She let me finish. She has always let me finish. It's her strongest move. Do you know what he'd be doing with those afternoons otherwise? She said. Sitting in an after-school room with a granola bar until 6:30. That's not the point. That was the point for the first 4 years of his life, Camille. You just weren't the one sitting in the room. Then gently, which was worse. He loves it. Ask him. Go ahead. Ask him if he wants to stop. And I couldn't. That's the thing. I stood in my kitchen with the phone against my ear, and I could not honestly say what my son would answer, because I had not been in the room. Take it down, I said. You'd be taking something away from him, she said, and you'd be doing it because your feelings are hurt. Think about how that looks. Then she said, the ham's Sunday, and hung up. I went back to the channel that night to look at the jackets again in the earliest videos, to see if I could date them. And on the way there, I saw something in the sidebar that I had not let myself look at properly, because it had my own life in the title, and there were 4 of them showing there, spaced about a month apart, and they were the ones with the numbers on them. I couldn't open them properly because half of what was on that channel wasn't public. There was a tab I couldn't get into. There were pinned posts with a little padlock. There was a button that said join, and under it, $4.99 a month. And a list of what you got. Early access, behind the scenes, and family updates. Family updates. I made an account that night with an email address I built out of my old college username and a number, and a profile picture of a coffee cup, and a name that was not my name. Then I put my debit card into a form and paid my parents $4.99 to see my son. I want to sit in that for 1 second, because I skated over it for weeks, and it kept coming back at night. I am his mother. My name is on the birth certificate in the handwriting of a nurse who spelled it wrong the first time. I have taken his temperature at 3 in the morning. I know which molar came in crooked, and I paid a subscription fee under a fake name with a picture of a coffee cup to find out what my child did on Thursdays. The card went through. A little animation played, a confetti thing, and a message came up thanking me for supporting the family. The locked tab opened. There were posts going back to September. Photographs, little updates, written in a warm, chatty voice with exclamation points. Signed Grandma. Addressed to a crowd of strangers who answered them by the 100. And there was a schedule. Not a description of a schedule. An actual one. posted for the members, with dates, what we're filming this month, where, and what to look forward to. September was the school pickups. November was the mall. March was the camp open house. It went out ahead of time, the way a network announces a season, and under each one there were dozens of comments saying they couldn't wait. I read 9 months of that in one sitting on my kitchen floor with my back against the dishwasher. Then I found the sort button, and I sorted the channel by most popular, and the whole thing rearranged itself, and the video at the top had 1.2 million views. It was posted at 9:40 at night on the 2nd of June. That Tuesday. That exact Tuesday. Uploaded 7.5 hours after the phone rang on my desk at 2:14. I know what you're thinking, because I thought it too, in a bright, empty way, like a light in a room with nobody in it. They cannot have filmed that. There was a principal and a forged form, and a woman driving 12 minutes with her hands at 10 and 2. Nobody films that. They filmed all of it, not the office. They never went in the office. They filmed the parking lot and the front doors and the sidewalk, and my mother's face in the car, with the engine running, doing a small patient shrug at the camera. They filmed the hallway from the doorway. They filmed my son sitting on the bench by the door with his red jacket on and the hood already up. The hood was up because they had dressed him for it. That's the detail. Out of 9 months, that's the one that got underneath everything and stayed. I had walked into that office and seen my kid sitting there with his hood up, like he'd been waiting to go somewhere. And I had thought, look at him, ready before anyone told him. He was in costume. He had been in costume all day. He had gone to school that morning in wardrobe, and I had zipped it for him at the drop-off lane and told him not to lose it. The edit ran 4 minutes and 10 seconds. It ended on the empty bench. It ended before I got there. The title was 6 words long, and one of them was, "Again." And the caption under it said, "She told him she'd try." 1.2 million people watched that. I scrolled the comments the way you press on a bruise. 2,000 of them. And they were not about my parents. They were about me. They called me a piece of work. They called me a woman who should never have had him. They said thank God for grandparents. One of them, with 4,000 likes on it, said, "That poor baby, sitting there in his little red coat, waiting for a mother who was never coming." I read that one twice, and then I put the phone face down on the linoleum and sat there with my hands over my ears like a child in my own kitchen at 1 in the morning. Here's what broke. And it wasn't my heart. I'd already been through that part in a closet full of coats. It was the plan. Because up to that night, every single thing I had done was a version of the same thing, telling people the truth. I told the principal, I told the platform, I told a lawyer, I told my mother twice. I had been walking around for 3 weeks with a spreadsheet, like a woman who believes that the world runs on being correct. And I had assumed that at some point, I would find the right adult and say the true sentence, and the machine would stop. 1.2 million people had already heard a different sentence. There is no true sentence you can say into that. There is no comment you can leave, no post you can write, no video you can make, holding up a piece of paper. I know exactly what would have happened, because I watched it happen to other people all year in those comment sections. I would have become content. My denial would have been a good week for them. You cannot win an argument inside somebody else's edit. So I stopped arguing. I want to be precise about the moment, because it was very small and it happened on a floor. I picked the phone back up. I closed the comments. I opened the account page for my $4.99 membership, and I did not cancel it because a person who cancels is a person who has been seen. And then I opened a new spreadsheet next to the first one, and at the top of the first column, I typed the word filings. Not feelings, filings, because here's what I actually am, under the tiredness and the gratitude and the 6 years of being too proud to ask anyone for anything. I am the person a company hires to find the gap between what you say you're allowed to do and what you are actually allowed to do, and to write the letter that costs them. They had built a business on my son. A business has an employer field. A business has permits. A business has a payer. and a payee, and an account, and a state that regulates it, and a platform with a compliance department, and brands with legal teams who are terrified of exactly one thing. They had spent 9 months making my son into an employee. Employees are regulated. If you have made it this far with me, you already know this isn't a story about a mean grandmother. Tell me in the comments what you would have done at that kitchen table at 1 in the morning. Because from here on, I stopped talking to my family entirely, and I started writing to institutions. And everything I did after this, I did on paper. The next morning, I got up at 5, made coffee, and wrote out longhand on a legal pad everything I would need and who had it. The school had my son's educational record, and I had a right to it as his parent. And inside it was the original enrollment card I filled out myself in July of 2024, with my real signature on it, witnessed, dated, and sitting in a file cabinet. The cleanest exemplar of my handwriting in existence, in the possession of a public institution with a chain of custody. The State Labor Department had an application for a minor's performance work permit, with my name forged on it, and a renewal filed in May. And I was not a curious member of the public asking for a stranger's file. I was the person whose name appeared on it. Some business in this town had signed a location agreement to let a camera crew shoot a child in its center court, and its property manager had a copy, and companies keep those forever. An agency somewhere had a representation contract and a minor talent release, and agencies are audited. A platform had a monetization file with a legal entity attached to it, and that entity was a limited liability company registered with the Secretary of State, which is a public search that takes 4 minutes and costs nothing. And a bank somewhere had an account. I wrote that last one down and underlined it twice, and I didn't know yet why. By 7, I had a list of 6 things to request, and the order to request them in, which was the reverse of the order you would guess, because you always ask the slow institutions first. I dropped him at school at 8:10. He had a different coat on that morning, a blue one, because the red one was in the wash, and he complained about it the whole way there. "It's not my one," he said. "It's a coat." "It's not my one, though." I watched him go through the doors in the blue coat with his backpack on crooked, and I thought, somebody has taught my child that he has a costume. Then I drove to a copy shop and sent 4 letters certified mail before I went into the office, and I paid for tracking on all of them, and I kept the receipts in a folder, and that was the first morning in 3 weeks that my hands were steady. Institutions are slow the way glaciers are slow. They are also, for the same reason, very hard to argue with once they start moving. The school record request I filed under the federal statute that gives a parent the right to inspect their child's educational file. 45 days, by law. I asked for everything, including the access log. Every person or entity that had been granted access to my son's record and on whose authority. The State Labor Department was a different animal, and I did that one twice, because the first time I asked like a mother, and the second time I asked like a professional. The first letter said I believed my signature had been misused, and could someone please look into it. That letter got me a form response with a case number and a sentence about processing times. The second letter, 4 days later, requested certified copies of the complete application file for a named minor's performance work permit, including the original application, the renewal, all attachments, and the district verification packet, made by the individual whose signature appears in the parent-guardian block, and it enclosed a notarized affidavit, stating under penalty of perjury that the signature in that block was not mine, and that I had never authorized its use. I paid $11 for the notary at a bank counter. The notary asked if I was okay, and I said yes, and she stamped it and said good luck like she meant something by it. That's the difference, by the way, and it's the only professional advice in this entire story. An institution cannot act on your feelings. It can only act on a document that creates an obligation. The first letter asked them to care. The second letter made a record that somebody would eventually have to answer for. Then I did the 4-minute thing. The Secretary of State has a business search. You type a name in a box. 2 afternoons media. LLC. Active, registered agent, my father, at their home address. Managers, 2, both at that same address. Date of formation, August 14th, 2025. I read the date and then I sat back and read it again. August 14th. I signed the stack at that counter on August 21st. My mother put 2 fingers on the corner of the paper and said, "You're swaying. Sign it. Take him home. Sleep." The company was 7 days old when she said that. They didn't see an opportunity and take it. They didn't get carried away. They didn't drift into it a little at a time, the way people tell themselves they drift into things. They incorporated, and then they went and got the signature they needed. I printed the filing page and put it in the folder and closed the folder, and then I went and stood in the doorway of my son's room for a while, which I did a lot that summer. And he was asleep on his stomach, with one leg out the way he has since he was 2. I did not wake him up. I didn't have anything to say to him yet that was true, and also 6 years old. The waiting was the hard part, and the waiting had a rule, and the rule was that nothing about me could change. So I went to Sunday dinner. I ate the ham. I said the ham was good. I let my mother tell me I looked tired, and I said work was busy. And I let my father say the thing about the driveway, and I helped clear. And I did not look at the closet door in the back bedroom even once. The hardest acting of my life happened over a dishwasher. "You've gone quiet," my mother said, at the sink in July. "I've been thinking about what you said." Her hands stopped in the water for half a second. "Which part?" "That he loves it," I said. "That I should ask him." She turned around and dried her hands on the towel and looked at me with real, warm, unguarded relief. And she put her palm flat on my cheek, the way she used to when I had a fever. And she said, "Oh, sweetheart, thank you." I let her leave her hand there. I have thought about that a great deal since, and I'm not going to pretend it was clean. There is a version of me that could not have done that, and she was a better daughter, and she also would have lost. On the drive home, my son asked me if I was going to be in one. I kept my eyes on the road. "In one what?" "A video," he said, in the voice of a kid, asking whether we can get the cereal with the marshmallows. "Grandma says, maybe you'll do the one where you come back." "The one where you come back." I said, "We'll see," and put the radio on, and drove exactly the speed limit the whole way home. Then I put him to bed, and I sat down, and I stopped looking at the channel as a pile of videos, and started looking at it the way you look at a season of television. There was a playlist. It was pinned. It had a name and 11 entries, and the entries were spaced almost exactly a month apart, and the thumbnails all had the same design on them. A yellow strip along the bottom, which nothing else on the channel had. The first one was posted in September. I watched all 11 in a row, in order, from 10 at night until 2 in the morning, and by the 4th one I could predict the structure before it happened, and by the 7th I was writing the structure down in the margin of the legal pad, and by the 11th I had stopped being a person watching her son and become a person breaking down a format, because it was the only way to keep watching. The structure was this: open on him excited about something. Establish the thing he's looking forward to. Establish gently. Always, in my mother's voice. Always with a little apologetic smile. That his mom was going to try to make it. Cut to the activity. Cut to him having a wonderful time. And then, at the 3-minute mark, the beat that the whole thing is built to deliver. The look toward the door. The empty chair. My mother's hand on his shoulder. And a line of text on the screen, in the same font every time. She's working. 11 episodes. 1 a month, like clockwork, since the 2nd week of September. I was not an absence in that channel. I want to be very clear about the difference, because it took me half the night to get to it, and it changed everything about what I did afterward. An absence is what's missing. I was a character. I had a role and a function and a reliable slot in the runtime. I was the thing that made the sweetness land. Every warm afternoon on that channel got its warmth from a woman who didn't come, and 500,000 people needed her to keep not coming, and every month on schedule she didn't. They hadn't hidden the channel from me. They had cast me in it. And then, at about 1:30 in the morning in the March episode, I found the screenshot, right at the 2-minute mark. Up on the screen, blown up big, a text message conversation. Her question on the left, my answer on the right, my actual words, my actual gray bubble. Can you make it by 4 today? Can't, sorry, 6:30? And under it, on screen, that font again, she's working. I sat there and looked at it, and something didn't fit, and it took me a minute to find it because it was so small. I never got a text asking me to come at 4 that day. I got a text asking if I could make it by 4. That's not an invitation. There was no plan. There was nothing to be late for. My mother had sent me a question at 3:52 in the afternoon on a Thursday, when she knew exactly where I was, and I had answered it in 11 seconds, between meetings the way you answer your mother, and she had screenshotted my answer and put it in an episode. I got my phone. I scrolled back 4 months in the thread. It took a while, and there it was, in my own hand, sent 3:52 p.m., received 3:52, answered 3:52. Then I scrolled the whole thread from September forward, and I found 9 more. 9 questions with no plan attached to them. Sent between 3:40 and 4:10 in the afternoon, always on a Tuesday or a Thursday. Always phrased so that any honest answer from a working woman would look like a no. Any chance you're free? Did you make it by 5? Think you'll be able to swing by? I had answered every single one of them politely. She had been harvesting me. I put the phone down on the table very carefully, like it was hot, and I went and stood at the sink and drank a glass of water and looked at my own reflection in the kitchen window with the dark behind it. 10 months, 2 afternoons a week, and a little text at 3:52 once a month to get the raw material. That was the night I stopped being able to think of them as my parents while I worked. It's a strange thing to describe. I still called her mom, out loud, right up to the end. But somewhere in there, a switch went, and the file on my kitchen table stopped being about my family and started being a case. And the case had 2 subjects, and I knew what both of them had done. And when. The envelope from the state came on a Thursday in the middle of July. It was thick, and it had a certification seal on the corner. And I sat in the parking lot at work and did not open it for 9 minutes, because I already knew that whatever was in it, I could not unknow at 8:40 in the morning with a meeting at 9. Then I opened it anyway, 22 pages, certified, with a cover sheet from the Labor Department listing what was enclosed. Application for a minor's performance work permit. Filed December 4th, 2025. Minor's name, my son's, correct. Date of birth, correct. Type of employment, content production, digital media. Employer, 2 Afternoons Media, LLC. Place of employment, various per attached schedule. There was an attached schedule, 8 pages of it. Every shoot day since September, with times listed in a column like shifts, and in the parent or guardian block, my name, signed, leaning the wrong way. Underneath it, attached as required proof of parental identity, was a photocopy of my driver's license, front and back. I sat in that parking lot and got my phone out and scrolled back to August, because I already knew, the way you know a sound in your own house. August 19th, 2025. 2 days before the counter. A text from my mother. The school wants a copy of a parent ID for the file. Can you send me a picture of your license, front and back? And me at 10:14 at night sending it, with a thumbs up. I did that. Nobody forged that. I took 2 photographs of my own driver's license and sent them to my mother because the school wanted them, and the school never wanted them. And 4 months later, they went into a state application as proof that I was the person signing it. I put my head back against the headrest and looked at the roof of my car for a while. Then I went inside and worked a full day because I had a client review at 9, and because at that point, routine was the only structure I had left. And at lunch, I read the rest of it in my car with a sandwich I didn't touch. Page 19 was the one. Under the state's amended child performer provisions, effective January 1st, 2026, the renewal filed in May certified the existence of a block trust account, established for the benefit of the minor, into which the employer was required to deposit 15% of the minor's gross earnings, and which could not be accessed until the minor reached majority. Bank name, account number, date established, January 12th, 2026. Trustee of record, me. They had opened an account in my name at a bank I have never had an account at, to satisfy a law that exists specifically to keep people like them from taking money from children like him. And page 21 was the renewal, filed May 8th, 2026, with the district verification request stapled behind it. And that request had a routing stamp on it, and the stamp had the name of my son's elementary school on it. That was the thing on the principal's desk. That was the thick folder with no name on the tab. That was not just at this school. Not another school. Never another school. A state agency had asked his school to confirm that a child was keeping up academically while working, and the school had opened the envelope and found a mother's signature on a document the school had never generated, and a man in a tie had sat with that for a night, and was still sitting with it when my parents walked into his front office the next afternoon. I scanned page 1 and page 19 and emailed them to the lawyer with 4 words in the body. Is this still civil? He replied in 22 minutes, which for a lawyer is a scream. Call me today. Don't send that to anyone else until we talk. He explained it to me in about 90 seconds, and I will condense it further. A forged signature on a school pickup slip is a mess. A forged signature on an application to a state agency, submitted to obtain a permit, with a forged identity document attached, submitted twice, in support of a commercial enterprise that earned money. That is not a family disagreement. That has a statute number. That gets a different phone call from a different kind of office, and it does not require me to sue anybody or spend $30,000, because the state is the injured party too. Do you understand what you've got? He said. I understand what I've got. Most people bring me a bad feeling and a spreadsheet. I've been told, I said. The school record came 9 days later in a manila envelope, 3-hole punched. 2 things in it mattered. The first was the original enrollment card I filled out in July of 2024, before any of this, in my own handwriting, dated and witnessed by the front desk assistant, sitting in a public school's file cabinet for 2 years, with a chain of custody a first-year clerk could testify to. My signature, upright, boring, mine. You cannot buy an exemplar like that. You can only have been an ordinary parent 2 years earlier. The second was the access log, which I had asked for because you always ask for the log, and which showed that in September of 2025, a standing designee had been added to the record, and that on May 11th, 2026, the district had transmitted a verification packet to the school, and that on May 26th, a new enrollment clerk had opened the second grade file to build it for the coming year, and had flagged a signature mismatch on the pickup authorizations. May 26th. The phone rang on my desk on June 2nd. Somebody I have never met, whose name I only know because it's initialed in a log, sat down with 2 pieces of paper in a folder and thought, that's not the same handwriting. 10 months, 500,000 subscribers, 400 videos, and the whole thing came apart because a new clerk was careful. I sent her flowers in September. I have never told anyone that until now. The bank took me 9 days and 1 very long counter conversation, and I got there by walking in with the certified state file, open to page 19, and my driver's license, the real one, and asking for the branch manager, and using the sentence I use at work. I'm the trustee of record on this account, and I'm requesting a statement of activity since opening. She read page 19. Then she read my license. Then she typed for a while and went away and came back with a printout and put it face up in front of me, and she had gone a little careful around the mouth. Opened January 12th, 2026. Opening deposit, $25. 1 withdrawal, January 20th, $25. Balance since January 20th, $0.00. 6 months of a legally mandated child's trust account in my name, with nothing in it and nothing ever put in it. I asked her to print it twice. She printed it 3 times. The agency was the last piece, and the agency was the one that told me how big this actually was. I sent them a records demand as the parent of a minor, whose name appeared in their representation file, and as the person whose signature appeared on their talent release, and I attached the affidavit and the certified state page, and I gave them 10 business days, and their compliance counsel called me on day 4. I want to be fair to that woman. She was decent. She was also, from about the second minute, protecting a company. They produced the file, a minor talent release, October 2025, my name, leaning, a representation agreement, same, an earnings summary, gross receipts across platform revenue, brand integrations, and licensing, September through July, $214,000 and change, paid to 2 Afternoons Media, LLC, and an email chain. February 9th, the agency's own coordinator writing to my mother, asking for a copy of a court order or other documentation of legal guardianship, because the file showed grandparents managing a minor whose parent had never appeared on a call or an email. February 11th, my mother's reply, she's very busy. She works 10 hours a day. She's asked me to handle it. April 2nd, the agency asking again. Second request, please advise. April 3, my mother. Everything is signed. Is there a problem with the numbers? And nothing after that, no third request. There was no third request, because between April and July, that channel put up 130 videos and cleared better than $19,000 a month. And there is a temperature at which a compliance question stops being asked. Behind that, forwarded in the same bundle, was a note from the platform's partner manager, dated February 20th, flagging the account for minor participant documentation and asking for resolution. Nobody ever answered it. The flag just sat there, in a system, next to a very good number. I read all of that at my kitchen table at 11 at night, with my son asleep down the hall, and when I got to the end, I did not feel triumphant, and I did not feel like a woman about to win. It was worse than my mother. That's what I kept coming back to. My mother is one person. My mother I could have understood. I have understood her my whole life. She was not complicated. She wanted to be the one who mattered, and she found a machine that would tell her she was 500,000 times a day. But there were 5 other rooms in this. A talent agency with a compliance department, a platform with the flag and a queue, 2 brands with legal teams, a bank that opened an account for a trustee who never walked in. Every single one of them had a moment where the right question got asked, and every single one of them looked at the number and decided the question could wait. That's the thing I'd tell you if we were sitting across a table. It didn't take a monster. It took my mother, and then it took 5 ordinary companies not wanting to know. So I stopped writing to companies. The last piece of paper I looked at that night wasn't a filing. It was a ticket page, because the channel had been advertising it for 3 weeks, with a countdown clock on the front of it, a live taping. To celebrate 500,000 subscribers. A rented auditorium in town, doors at 6, 180 seats, meet and greet after, tickets $35, brand partners in attendance, and the whole thing streaming live on the channel. Tuesday, August 11th. I read the date, and something in my chest went very quiet and very level. A living room is a house, a rented auditorium with paid tickets, a stage, 2 brand representatives, a talent manager, a camera crew, and a 6-year-old performing to a schedule is not a house. It's a workplace. I bought 1 ticket, back row, on the aisle, $35 in my own name, because I was done pretending to be a coffee cup. On Friday, August 7th, I filed 3 things before noon. The first was a complaint to the Field Enforcement Division of the State Labor Department. Not a letter asking someone to look into a channel. A complaint identifying a specific employer, a specific minor employee, a specific permit obtained by a forged parental signature, and a specific place of employment on a specific date and time, with the ticket page printed and attached, and the run of show attached behind it. I had the run of show because the members area had posted it. $4.99 a month. They put the whole evening up for their supporters, minute by minute, and one of their supporters read it like a compliance officer, because that's what she was. Doors at 6, opening at 6:40, first segment 6:50, games at 7, and at 7:20, 12 minutes, marked out for a wardrobe change, and the sponsor reel, backstage, with the manager, while the audience watched a highlight reel. In my complaint, I asked, in writing, in a numbered paragraph, that any on-site inspection be conducted during the 7:20 segment, when the minor would be off stage and out of the room. I want that paragraph read at my funeral. It's the only thing I did that whole summer that I'm sure was right. The second filing was a statutory claim over my son's likeness, brought by me as his parent, served on the company, the agency, and the platform, on the ground that every release authorizing the commercial use of his image carried a signature that was not mine and had never been mine, which meant that not one of those 400 videos had ever been licensed by anybody with the authority to license it. The third was a criminal report, forgery, and filing a false instrument with a state agency, twice, in support of a business. I gave that to a detective in a room with a poster about bicycle registration, and he read page 1 and page 19 and said, "Ma'am, give me a minute," and left the room and came back with someone senior. All three went in on Friday. Everything gets docketed Monday. Enforcement moves Tuesday. I could have filed in June. I want to be honest with you about that because it's the part I'm least proud of and the part I would do again. By the second week of July, I had the certified file, the exemplar, the affidavit, and the bank statement. I could have walked all of it into that building and put a stop to the whole thing in a quiet office, with nobody watching. I chose Tuesday, August 11th, not because I wanted a scene. I have never in my life wanted a scene. Because for 11 months, I had been a character in a story that 500,000 people had already decided was true, and every one of those people believed the woman on that stage. And a quiet office fixes a permit and fixes nothing else. The forgery happened on paper. The other thing they took happened out loud, in front of an audience once a month, on a schedule. If it ends in an office, my son grows up in a town where everyone knows the version with the yellow letters. So I picked the room with the lights on. She called me Sunday night. "So," my mother said in the warm voice, the good one, the one I actually miss. "Tuesday." "Tuesday," I said. "They want a family shot at the end. All of us on the stage for the 500,000. A pause exactly long enough to be a gift. He asked if you'd be there. Put him on. He got on the phone breathing into it the way he does. Too close. "Are you coming?" I was standing in my kitchen with my hand flat on the counter. "I'll be there the whole time," I said. "The whole time?" "The whole time." "Okay," he said, and then, because he's 6, "Grandma says I get the microphone." I said that sounded great. I told him I loved him. I hung up, and I stood in my kitchen for a while, and then I went and got his blue coat out of the closet and put it by the door for Tuesday, because the red one was going to be at the auditorium in a garment bag with 5 others, and there wasn't one thing I could do about that. Tuesday I worked a full day. I don't remember any of it. I got there at 6:05 in a gray cardigan with my hair up, and I gave a 19-year-old my $35 ticket, and he scanned it and said, "Enjoy the show." 180 seats, they were full. There were kids in the audience wearing red jackets. Not 6 of them. Maybe 15. Little ones, 4 and 5 and 7 years old, in red hooded jackets, with their mothers, waiting to see him. I sat in the back row on the aisle and put my bag on my lap and my hands on my bag. At 6:38, a woman 2 seats down leaned toward her friend, and I heard her say it, because people say things in rooms. "Wait, isn't that?" I looked straight ahead. They opened with the theme they use on the videos. My mother came out first to real applause. My father came out behind her and stood a half step back with his hands folded, the way he stands at a grill, at a graduation, at anything. Then my son ran out in the red jacket with the hood up, and 180 people made a sound I will hear for the rest of my life, and he did a little wave he has clearly been taught, and my chest did something I don't have a word for. He was so happy. I need you to know that, because it would be easier for me if he hadn't been. They did a segment. They did the games. A brand representative came up at 7:05 and said something about a partnership in a lunchbox. And there was a lanyard on him, and a woman in the second row filmed the whole thing on a phone with the ring light attached to it. And at 7:11, my mother took a stool at center stage, and the room went to that hush that rooms go to, and she started the part she does. People ask me, she said, all the time, in the comments, in the store. They ask, does his mom know? Laughter. Warm, comfortable laughter. His mother, my mother said, signed off on every page of this from the very first day. Every form, every permission. I have a file this thick. She held her fingers apart. That boy has never once been anywhere he wasn't allowed to be. The applause started and did not finish, because the doors at the back of the house opened at 7:22. 3 people came in. 2 of them stayed at the door. The one in front had a state identification badge on a lanyard and a folder under her arm, and she did not hurry. And she walked down the center aisle in a room that was still holding the last of a laugh. My son was backstage, wardrobe change, 12 minutes. The highlight reel was playing on the screen behind the stage the entire time, which meant that for the next several minutes, my mother was standing under a 2-story projection of her own greatest hits. I'm looking for the employer of record for tonight's production, the inspector said. She did not use a microphone. She didn't need one. 2 afternoons media. Is a representative here? My mother stood up off the stool, and she was not frightened. That's what I want you to understand about my mother. She was pleased. Somebody official had walked into her 500,000 subscriber night and asked for the person in charge, and she was the person in charge. That's us, she said into the microphone. So the whole room got it. Is there a problem? I'll need your minor's performance work permit and photo identification for the parent or guardian on record. Of course. She actually smiled. She turned and said something to the manager, and the manager brought a binder up the stage steps. A real binder, 3 inches, tabbed, because they had done everything properly. They had done everything properly the entire time, except for the one thing at the bottom of every page. It's all in here. It's all current. We renewed in May. May 8th, the inspector said, without looking up. That's right. And the parent-guardian block on both the original and the renewal. That's signed by whom? By his mother, my mother said. By my daughter. The inspector opened her own folder then, on the podium, next to the binder. I know exactly what was in that folder, because I assembled it. A certified copy of the application and the renewal. A photocopy of an enrollment card from July 2024, on file with a public school for 2 years, with my real signature on it, upright. A notarized affidavit of forgery, and a 1-page bank statement for a block trust account established under the amended child performer provisions, showing an opening deposit of $25, 1 withdrawal of $25, and a balance for 203 days of 0. She laid them side by side on the podium, in that order, and she turned them so that they faced the stool. Ma'am, she said, these signatures don't match. That's not possible, my mother said. The exemplar is from the school district. It predates the application by 16 months. The inspector moved 1 page, 1/2 inch. And this account is required to hold 15% of the minor's gross earnings. It's been empty since January. There's an explanation for that. There may be. It won't be tonight. She took a pen out. As of now, I'm issuing a stop on this production and referring the permit for suspension. That means the minor cannot perform at this event. This is a place of employment, and I'm required to tell you that operations involving him stop here. Somewhere behind the curtain, a stage manager was told to hold him. He never came back out. I found out later he sat down and waited, because he had been taught to wait. Somebody in the middle of the house said out loud, "What's happening?" Nobody answered them. The 2 brand representatives were already standing, not rushing, standing the way people stand when the room is still deciding what it is, so that they can be recorded as having stood early. One of them was on his phone before he got to the end of the row. The manager from the agency took 2 steps back from my mother. I've replayed that. It's such a small thing, and it was the loudest thing in the building. He didn't say anything. He didn't argue. He moved his body 2 feet away from a woman he had been standing beside all evening, and the whole room read it instantly because every single person in there speaks that language. Behind them on the 2-story screen, the highlight reel was still going. My son at the mall. My son at the rink. My son in the red jacket, laughing, 20 feet tall, with nobody at the switch to turn it off. The hush lasted maybe 4 seconds. Then my mother did the thing that ended her. And she did it with a microphone in her hand, in front of 180 ticket holders, and a live stream that was still up. She signed all of it that August, she said. Every page. At my kitchen table before school even started. My daughter sat in my house and signed every single one of those pages. I did not move. I want you to know that I did not move, and I did not stand up, and I did not say one word from the back of that room, because I didn't have to. The inspector looked at her for a moment. Then she put one finger on the top document. This application was filed on December 4th, she said. The renewal was filed May 8th. The company was registered on August 14th. She let that sit. Ma'am, you've just told this room that you were present when those pages were signed. That's all? That's the whole thing. Nobody shouted, nobody confessed. She reached for the one true thing she had, that I did sit at her counter in August and put my name on paper. And she reached for it in front of a crowd, and the dates were already in the room, and they were stamped by a state, and they were behind her by 4 months and 9 months and a week. My mother is a very quick woman. I watched her get there. I watched her face do the arithmetic in real time, the same arithmetic she did on the phone in June, 1 full second of it, in front of everybody. Then she started turning pages in the binder, fast, then faster. Looking for a page that would fix it, in a binder she had assembled herself, so she knew better than anyone that the page wasn't in there. And then she reached across the podium and turned the school enrollment card face down. That's it. That's the moment. She put her hand out and flipped a state investigator's exhibit over on a podium, on a live stream, in front of 180 people, because she could not stand to have it lying there face up. The inspector said, "Please don't touch that." And my mother pulled her hand back like the podium was hot, and the binder went off the edge and hit the stage, and 11 months of tabbed, laminated, properly organized paperwork fanned out across the boards. My father took the lapel microphone off his shirt, set it down on the stool, and walked off stage left. He never said one word. Not that night. Not at any of it since. His silence used to feel like weather to me. Something that just happened in our house. I understand now that it was a decision he made every day for 30 years. And he made it that night too. And he made it with a company registered in his name. He taught me to write my name so it stands up straight. That's the hand on the enrollment card. That's the hand that took the permit apart. He gave me the one thing they couldn't forge, and then he stood behind her while she forged it. The stream ran another 9 minutes before somebody backstage found the right button. A recording of those 9 minutes went up somewhere else within the hour and did about 300,000 views that week, which I mention only because of the arithmetic. It is roughly a quarter of the people who watched my son sit alone on a bench. I didn't go up to the stage. I never went up to the stage. I stood up when my father walked off stage left, and I walked out the side door and down the corridor to the green room, where the venue's stage manager was standing in a doorway with his phone against his chest. And I said, "I'm his mother. Here's my ID." And he moved out of the way faster than any adult has ever moved out of my way in my life. My son was sitting on a folding chair with his arms in the sleeves of the next red jacket. The second one, the one with the tag still on it. "Are you here for the family part?" he said. "I'm here for you." "Is it over?" "It's over." He thought about it, then he said, "Can I keep the microphone?" And I said, "No, buddy, that one's theirs." And he said, "Okay." And he took my hand in the parking lot. And that is how the biggest night of my life ended. Walking across asphalt with a 6-year-old asking whether we could stop for food. If you've stayed with me this long, do me one favor, and don't skip out on this part, because the confrontation was never the point, and I need somebody to hear the rest of it. Stay for the last few minutes. Here's what happened to the machine. The agency terminated the representation agreement in 48 hours on the ground that the file could not be validated, which is the sentence a company uses when it means we knew in February. Both brands pulled. Both issued statements about a commitment to the well-being of children in content. Neither statement mentioned that a coordinator had asked twice in writing and had let it go both times. The platform demonetized the channel on the Thursday, and my likeness claim did the rest. And I want to explain that mechanism, because it's the part people get wrong when they hear this story. I never owned one frame of that channel. I couldn't take it down as a wronged party, and no court was going to hand a woman 400 videos because she was angry. But every commercial use of a 6-year-old's image requires the consent of the person with legal authority to give it. And the only person with that authority was me. And every release in that file carried a signature that a state had already certified as questioned, and that I had sworn under penalty of perjury was not mine. Not one video on that channel had ever been licensed by anybody who could license it. That's not a lawsuit. That's a notice. I have written that notice 100 times for clients who make sneakers. I wrote it for my son on a Sunday afternoon at my kitchen table, and I attached the certified page and the affidavit, and I sent it to the platform, the agency, both brands, and 4 location partners, and within 11 days, 406 videos were gone from the platform, and the mirrors went down over the following month. The trust account was made whole under the statute, with interest, and it is blocked until he's 18, and I have never seen the balance, and I don't intend to. It isn't mine. It was never mine. It's the 11 months. Converted. The forgery went to the county prosecutor's office in September. That's still moving. It moves slowly, the way glaciers do. And my mother has not been in a room with me since August 11th. She's called. She's written 3 letters, and I've read all 3, and the strange thing about them, the thing I didn't expect, is that they're not apologies, and they're not attacks. They're pitches. All 3 of them explain, in a warm, reasonable voice, what he would have had. I don't answer them. There's no sentence I can write into that. I learned that in June. 2 nights after the auditorium, my son asked me the question I had been dreading for 10 weeks. We were in the car. He'd been quiet the whole way, which he never is. Did I do something wrong? I pulled into a parking lot to answer it, because you do not answer that at 40 miles an hour. No. Then why did the lady stop it? I turned around in my seat so he could see my whole face. Because there are rules about kids working, I said. And Grandma broke them, not you. You didn't do one thing wrong. Grandma used my name on the papers, and she wasn't allowed to. And that's the whole reason. It's a grown-up thing about paper, and it's finished now. He looked out the window for a while. Was I working? 6 years old. Yes, I said, you were. I thought we were just going places. And that is the sentence. Out of everything, the certified pages, the $214,000, the empty account, the closet full of coats, that's the one I carry. I thought we were just going places. I owe you one more thing, and then I'll stop. For 11 months, I told myself that the reason this happened was that I was tired, and that I trusted my mother, and that a woman who works 10 hours a day has to accept help when it's offered. All of that is true, and none of it is the reason. Here is the reason. There were nights when she texted at 4 in the afternoon and asked if she could keep him for dinner, and I said yes. And I put my phone down on my desk, and something in my chest came loose. Relief. That's the word. I'm going to say it plain, because I have had a year to find a softer one, and there isn't one. I was relieved. I'd get 2 hours, I'd eat standing up, I'd sit in my car in the lot for 10 minutes before I drove over, with the radio off, doing nothing, being nobody's mother, and then I'd pull into their driveway and say thank you at the door, with my keys already in my hand, and drive him home. And I would tell myself that I had done a hard thing well. She knew. Of course she knew. She has known me since the day I was born, and she found the one door in me that was already unlocked, and she went through it twice a week for 11 months with a camera. That's what I couldn't say out loud for most of last year, and it's why I let it go on as long as I did, and it's why the comments got in, because underneath all of it was a thing I actually believed, that they had a point. That a woman who felt relief when her child left the room had forfeited something. That maybe I was, in some small percentage, the character they were writing. I'm not. I want to say that to whoever needs it tonight, because I know what those 2 hours in the parking lot feel like, and I know what you tell yourself about them. Being relieved that someone loves your child enough to keep him for dinner does not make you a bad mother. It makes you one person doing the work of two. What I wanted was never for my parents to say I'd done a good job. I gave that up at 21 in a hallway with a baby on my shoulder. What I wanted was to be the person people thought of when they thought of him. That's all. That's the whole wound. And it took a state investigator and a certified file to let me see the shape of it. 500,000 people knew my son's face. 500,000 people had opinions about his mother. Not one of them knew my name, because in that story, I didn't have one. I had a role. She's working. They didn't take my child. He was never gone. He was asleep down the hall the entire time. They took me out of him, in front of everyone, on a schedule. The first Monday of the school year, I went into the office at 7:40 in the morning and asked for the second grade packet, and the new enrollment clerk, the careful one, the one I sent flowers to, put it on the counter and gave me a pen. I signed all 9 pages standing up in front of her one at a time, upright, boring, mine. She checked every one against the card in the file, which is her job, and which is the reason any of this is over. And when she got to the last one, she said, "That's a match." And I said, "Thank you." And I got out to the parking lot before anything happened to my face. 6 weeks after the auditorium, on a Tuesday, I picked him up at 3:10 myself. It was still warm. He came out with his backpack, on crooked, and a blue jacket he had picked out at a store in August, in a color I would not have chosen, with a zipper that catches at the bottom. He stopped in front of me and put his arms out, the way he does, waiting to be inspected. I got down and worked the zipper past the catch and pulled it up to his chin. "It's not my one," he said, testing it. "It's your one now," I said. "You picked it." "I did pick it," he agreed, like he was confirming a fact for the record, and then he wanted to know if we could get ice cream. We drove to Pearl Street. I sat in the car in front of that shop for a second longer than I needed to, and then I got out, because I had decided something on the drive over. He was going to get to have that shop back. It's 4 blocks from our apartment. It has been his favorite place since he was 4. I was not going to let them keep it. We went in. He ordered for himself, mint in a cup because he has views. The girl behind the counter asked him if he wanted sprinkles. She didn't know him. There were maybe 9 people in there. A couple by the window, 2 teenagers, a woman with a stroller, and a man reading something on his phone, and a kid, about 8 years old, in the corner with his mother. Nobody looked up. Nobody took a phone out. Nobody leaned toward a friend and said, "Isn't that?" Nobody's mother nudged them and pointed. A little boy in a blue jacket ate mint ice cream out of a paper cup at a wobbly table by the window and talked to me about whether snakes have bones. And the door opened and closed, and the machine behind the counter made its noise, and the whole world declined to notice him. I have never in my life been given a better gift, and it cost $4.50, and no one in that room knew they'd handed it to me. He got the last of it on his sleeve. On the blue one. I didn't wipe it off. On the way out, he took my hand at the curb without being told, and he said, "Are we coming back Thursday?" And I said, "Sure, nobody's expecting us." He said, "Okay," and that was that, and he swung our hands the way he does. That's what I got back. Not an apology. I'm never getting one of those, and I stopped waiting sometime around the second letter. I got a Tuesday afternoon with a kid who isn't anybody's episode. I got a shop where the girl at the counter has to ask his name. I got 9 pages of school forms with my own handwriting on them, upright, in a file cabinet, where they belong. 500,000 people knew my son's face, and not one of them knew mine. Now nobody knows his, and everybody in that building knows exactly whose he is.